Today on Life After 50, DML interviews Kim Nettling. She's a board-certified and licensed acupuncture physician. She specializes in treating people with autoimmune diseases, mysterious diseases, strokes, allergies, and much more. She and DML discuss her journey as a cancer survivor, the way she's helped heal people throughout her career, and what it means to listen to your body. It's a fascinating conversation, so here is Kim Nettling and DML.
Same question I ask everybody when we start. How old are you?
63.
63. All right. So when I met you, one of the most interesting parts of meeting you for the very first time, because I had no idea what I was going into with the acupuncture thing. All I know is I did not like needles.
Yeah.
But I was sort of at the end of my rope on so many different ends. And then I was having a lot of gastro issues and liver problems. In fact, I was diagnosed with fatty liver. And you told me that you had liver cancer. And I was like, finally, somebody knows what I'm talking about. Give the story of your liver cancer. I mean, you know, in the most condensed way you can.
Oh.
Where were you? What happened?
Well, I didn't realize I had liver cancer. When I first had it, I had liver failure.
Okay.
And that, at first they thought I was like a drug addict, you know, because IV drug users get liver failure, or an alcoholic. But I didn't do IV drugs, I didn't drink. Finally, they genotyped it and they figured out that I had a bad blood transfusion with my daughter in 1981 because I almost died on the table delivering her. And they gave me hepatitis with the blood transfusion. That's before they had any means of screening the blood. Nothing they did wrong. Slowly, the hepatitis ate away at my liver and it decompensated it. And then when I had a trauma to my liver, I used to ski, it impaled my liver. And the two exact spots where my liver were impaled was where the cancer started. It was the craziest thing. In Juneau, Alaska, they scanned and they found the trauma. And Mayo compared their scan to the cancer scan, and it was identical.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I got liver cancer.
Talk about you told me the story. It's a pretty incredible story. So what happened with that accident? It was a skiing accident. So explain what happened with that.
I impaled a tree. So I went into a hole with a tree. I wasn't a really super good skier, and I just ran into a tree. The branches impaled my liver.
Bang, went right through your skin.
No, not really. No, it just impaled. It bruised. I had a huge bruise where my liver was.
Okay.
Yeah, and the two spots that were damaged the most developed the liver cancer later.
So then you wound up having a liver transplantation.
Yeah, because my liver was completely decompensated.
Yeah.
And also because the liver, like it was kind of a game because the liver cancer couldn't grow too large or get out of these quadrants, or I didn't qualify.
So what's that like, Kim, when you are, you're told that you have, well, first of all, let's go back, because you're the first person I've had in this series who actually has had cancer. So when you get the diagnosis of you have cancer, what's that like?
Well, you go into shock. Like you don't have a clue. You can't even, it's like they're speaking gibberish. And then it took me being told again and again and again to really get my mind around it. I didn't want to believe that I was going to die. Like at that stage, I had already been denied.
How old were you?
That was 2015 when I was told I had cancer, and I'm 63 now.
So you're in your 50s?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you find out you have it, and then you went on a list for transplantation?
Not so simple.
Okay.
They, because I had hepatitis, they gave me a choice at Mayo when I finally found someone that would work with me. Most of the people wouldn't work with me. I was so sick.
Why?
Because they can't work with you if you're going to die on the operating table, and everybody was telling me I was going to die. So originally, when I had my liver failure, when I finally figured out I was sick, I was bleeding out of both orifices. I was pooing out a tarry substance, and I was throwing up coffee grounds. And that was while I lived in Alaska, but I was vacationing in Hawaii. And when I got back, they got me flight ready in Maui. When they got me back to Alaska, the hospital just said end of life, pretty much. You know, we're going to pump her full of oxys and make her really super comfortable, and we're shipping her to UAW.
So not only did you have to deal with you have cancer, but you have cancer and you're not going to survive. So you got hit with the double whammy. So it's.
But you don't believe it. Like I knew I knew that they didn't know my expiration date, and I didn't feel like I was done yet.
Okay.
So I knew there was a disconnect there, but when you're so sick, you can't utter sensible statements out of your mouth. I mean, there's just this disconnect, and you sound crazy, and you're not thinking straight. But in my mind, I knew I wasn't going to die.
I mean, did you go home and start taking out books and like what to do when you're cancer and you're stage 4 and all sorts of different stuff? I mean,
yeah.
Did you went through that whole process?
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
You have to, because I was able to contain the cancer in a decompensated liver and make lifestyle changes that didn't enhance the growth of the cancer.
You did that immediately on your own?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
They tell you you're going to die of cancer, and if your cancer grows out of criteria, you don't qualify for a transplant and you're dead. Absolutely, you'll do whatever it takes.
So were you too far gone at that point in their minds to even wind up going through radiation or chemotherapy or anything kind of like that? Or you said, no, I ain't doing that?
I didn't deny anything. I trusted Mayo. Mayo was the only one that would take a chance.
So when they said, so they took a look at your scans and everything else, and they said, all right, you know what, we're gonna take a chance with this.
Well, they pulled all my data from my prior liver transplant denials, like from UAW, from Hawaii, from Berkeley, from Mount Sinai, like all the people that had denied me and went and take a chance on me. They pulled all their records together.
And when you say that chance was strictly from transplantation, or they said you're even too far gone to be going through chemo?
Well, it's more complicated than that. When I first landed stateside from Hawaii, I went to Alabama to visit my family. And at UAW, they were going to take me for transplant, but my insurance wouldn't cover it. So Aetna said, they're not one of our gold standard. They're not one of our centers of excellence. We'll cover 80%, and you're talking a $2-3 million procedure.
So 20% is $400,000. Oh my goodness.
And I was like, no way. I don't even know if I can return to work at that point. I didn't know what was going on. Right. So I said, give me your list. But what did happen is my uncle was friends with a doctor who finally operated on my umbilical hernia.
At Mayo?
In Alabama.
Okay.
And they closed up my intestines, so my intestines didn't keep falling out because I had this umbilical hernia that was really super bad from the ascites.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever experienced someone with liver failure, but you get the ascites. The person, like I was like a skeleton, walking skeleton, and at some point I'll show you pictures if you're interested, but I had a big old belly, huge belly. They would take out 7.5 liters through the paracentesis twice a week. So that's like 27 pounds of fluid twice a week they took out of my ascites.
How did they do that, with a needle?
You lay down and they pierce the needle. My fluid was always clear. It wasn't occluded. It wasn't cloudy. It wasn't infected. Thank goodness. And then they also took out 2 liters from each lung cavity through a thoracentesis every other week. So
what causes that? I mean, what causes that? I mean, well, first of all, let me step back for a second. If you're so thin because you're so sick, and then all of a sudden you see that you look like you're pregnant, I mean, did you know right away what was taking place?
The ascites didn't come until I started bleeding. So the first thing that ever happened to me, I was working with the state of Alaska, and a coworker came in and shut the door, and she said, something's wrong with you. And they forced me to go on vacation for 2 weeks. I went to Hawaii, and that's when I started my bleeds.
Okay.
But to them, they already knew I was puffing up. You puff up before this kind of thing happens, and then you get super thin, and then your ascites comes out. I can spot a liver issue a mile away.
A mile away. So you finally get approved through Mayo to have a liver transplantation. What's that? When you're on the list and when you finally get a liver, I mean, does it feel like a whole new hope? Are you nervous about putting somebody else's body part in your body part? What's it like?
You trust them implicitly. I mean, because the alternative is death, right?
Right.
So with me, I was approved. I just looked back in my email because I was coming here. August 31st, 2016, in my notes, it shows that Mayo approved me for liver transplant. I got my liver September 21st.
Pretty quickly.
But I was at the top of the list because of the cancer and the complete decompensation of my liver.
Really?
I was just not functioning. When you don't have a functioning liver, you can't stand to be around anyone that has any kind of fragrance. Even if they say I didn't put on perfume, you can smell their soap and it can make you sick as a dog.
Really?
That's what you're living with. And so you isolate yourself.
You isolate, yeah.
You can't be, I couldn't walk in a store.
Do you go into a depression when you're so alone like that?
Yeah, I guess so. You're so wrapped up in trying to figure it out that you're not really, you don't have time to dwell on the negative.
Sure.
Because what happened to me anyway, I found out that I was just like, I'm going to beat it. Like, I had no doubt in my mind I was going to beat it. And I am a Christian, so I would pray, and I had thousands of people praying for me from Alaska, Alabama, wherever I was surrounded in prayer. And you can't tell me that didn't have anything to do with where I am.
Of course it does.
So
one of the interesting parts, just to come away for a second, because I want to ask what it's like after you get a transplantation, but I think it's a very interesting part that, you talked about Alaska. You were actually part of Sarah Palin's team at some point, right? So
yes.
When she was governor.
Right.
So what was your work at that point?
I was the operating manager. They call me I was a step under the director for what used to be called ETS, Enterprise Technology Services. So I would go to the NESTD conferences for the state. I would go to DC to represent us. I would do the State of the Union for Alaska and represent all of the stuff that was going on from an infrastructure perspective.
From an IT infrastructure, so for technology. So you were in the technology sphere.
Engineering, right.
Engineering.
And
Okay.
I'm a PMP. I still maintain that credential, even though I don't really plan on going back. But I think my criteria, I can manage between 25 and 50 million in grants still. Because so I would seek money or find out if the money they were offering was something we really wanted.
For the IT departments and stuff of that nature.
Sarah was a wonderful administrator.
Sarah Palin.
Oh, she was awesome.
Was she good to work for?
Oh, yeah. Everybody's got their pros and cons, but she was receptive to the training. When a new governor comes in, you have to train them. And she broke all that old boy network. So, like, we didn't have to pay $25 for a pen. She got an operating budget. We could go to Costco and buy like a whole dozen or 144 for $25.
She inserted common sense, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so she comes off as a very feisty person, but she looks like she's a lot of fun.
Oh, she is. And I totally respect her. Like at Fred Meyer, that's the common shop store up in Juneau. She's down the same aisle with me, shopping for her family,
Just a
kids
normal
in tow.
person.
Just a normal human.
So going back into, now you're at Mayo and you're getting your liver transplant. How long does that operation last for from an hour standpoint?
Oh, gosh, mine was long. The surgeon came in and apologized after because I got a huge liver. He said it was just at the edge of being out of criteria. They had overestimated my size because of the ascites that's spreading my ribs. I guess I still have a few broken ribs, but long time.
A long time.
Long time.
Long time. And then so they take a liver that really doesn't fit your body, but at the end of the day, you need the liver. So your liver is not necessarily now sitting in the same spot that mine is or Ryan's is, I guess, because it's as big as it is.
It's bigger, yeah, but I'm so grateful. I could care less about the big belly, so I'm okay with it.
So where the liver is, it's causing your belly to expand in terms of.
And I have a hiatal hernia.
Okay.
So
because of the liver.
Well, that, and I didn't go by their directions. They say we can't pick up anything bigger than a gallon of milk for like 21 days or something. And of course I felt good, so I had to not do it.
So you were doing work and things that you shouldn't have been doing. Yeah. And so that sort of set you back a little bit.
But other than that, I'm a great patient. I follow them.
So after you get a transplantation and you wake up and you're like, ooh, and then they say, hey, you're cancer-free and you've got a working liver now. Did you feel as if like you had this unbelievably second lease on life?
Oh yeah,
Like
that's
you
why
weren't going to waste a single day.
That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I wake up and I literally have to pinch myself that I'm living this dream.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I love what I do.
Well, we're going to get to that in a big part. So now you have your new liver, you have your new lease on life, you're feeling great again. And with that in play, what makes you decide to go from I was an IT professional working in the government for Alaska to I'm coming to Florida and I'm going to start to become an acupuncturist?
Well, I'm not going to ever move away from Mayo. They're my transplant center.
Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'm going to be somewhere around them. And Vero was appealing to me because I don't like big cities, and we vacationed here off and on earlier. I just kind of like the vibe here. To me, it feels like paradise.
It is paradise, yeah.
So I'm good.
So that's what drove you here. All right. So now we understand why you're in Florida. What makes you pick up the I'm going to start sticking needles in people?
Well, when you come out of something like that, you know a lot.
Yeah.
And I had all these GERs. I could have picked Western medicine or
What's a GER?
General educational requirement.
Okay.
So I had enough that I could ease into medical school, and I know I could be accepted. Mayo loves to hire people that they work on, so I knew I could have slid into that. But I didn't want to do pill for an ill, and also at this age and stage, I'm not going to do residency.
So a pill for an ill, I think that's an interesting little statement. So a pill for an ill is your nice, clever little sneaky way of saying that you did not want to get involved in what is known, I guess, as Western medicine.
I respect Western medicine. They saved my life. And I'll never go off my tacrolimus. Like, I'm a good patient. But as far as chronic ailment, I think they have some challenges.
Yeah. So and I agree with you. And it's one of the things I've learned the most in going through some of the stuff I went through is that when you walk into a doctor's office or even a hospital for that matter, right away, we'll solve this with a pill, or we'll put the fire out with a pill. And it never, ever feels as if they're going to the core root problem to try to fix it or anything like that. And I watched so many people, and I started to become one of them. With my stomach, it was omeprazole.
Right.
You've got so much acid.
Right.
It wasn't about why is your body producing so much acid, or even, hey, acid's good for you in certain ways. It was, you need to take this drug. And, well, how long do I have to take it? For the rest of your life.
Exactly.
Wait a second, there's nothing I can do for the rest of your life. And then you take the drug and you call up and you're like, my stomach is killing me more than it was prior to the drugs. Just take it. It's going to wind up getting better.
I know.
So in other words, what you're saying is that I'm going to punch myself in the face so much so that eventually I'm going to go numb and I won't feel I'm punching myself in the face.
And bless their soul, the doctors don't have time. They don't have time to figure this out. I mean, the way we've set up this medical system, what do they get? 15 minutes with you? And they're going to know your life story with you sitting there?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So, like, if a patient comes to me for internal disorders, I make them write like a list from birth to now, what's happened to you.
I went through it.
And put in like what you took as medications and how you felt. And then we draw a line and we say, when was the last time you felt good? And we start unraveling it from there. And you'd be surprised with just good old common sense what you can do.
Oh, I know. And I've been in your clinic, and I know what it is, how you operate. We're going to get to that. But before we get there, so you didn't want to go into the pill mill business. And so you said, I'll become an acupuncturist, which is, by the way, considered Eastern medicine, right? So you decide to do this. And how long did it take you to become an acupuncturist? Like officially, you got your degree, so to say.
Oh, like the legal medical license?
Yeah, like to where you're allowed to practice.
So you have to have some prior education in health science. So you have to have a bachelor's in some health science to begin with, 4 years. Then on top of that, you do a minimum of 3, preferably 5. Then you qualify for taking the board. And it's an NCOM, Nationally Supervised Board, 4 sections. And you got to study. For me, I studied a month and I took a board. I studied a month and I had no problem. It was like not even breaking a sweat to pass the board. I know so much about Western that it was ludicrous, the questions they asked to me.
Really?
And I'm still learning. I'm still learning. There's new drugs being developed and stuff. I could have easily been a Western guy. I just didn't I take a whole hour and a half with a person, you know,
Yeah,
and
it's
I
true.
love it. I love visiting with them, seeing how they feel, what we can like pull on. I
So,
like my pace.
so let's now explain to people the premise or the basis of acupuncture, because when somebody thinks of acupuncture who's never done it before, and I know this because that's me, I remember my chiropractor. I said, hey man, what you're doing for me is good,
Right.
but it's not getting me over the finish line. And he said, I think you need acupuncture. And I said, all right. And he believes in holistic medicine and things of that nature. And I said, all right. And it's the greatest story of all, because he says, the woman you want to go to is right down the block. And I
And
said,
that
all
was
right.
Julieta.
Yeah. And so I said, right down the block? He says, yeah, right on the street. She's right on the street. And I said, all right, fine. So Mary, he doesn't give me a card or anything like that. So Mary and I go home. And I said, Mary, apparently the acupuncturist is right on the same street that Colin is on. And Colin was my first guest.
Oh.
Yeah, he was my first guest to
Okay.
lead this whole story. So we go, and Mary does the search for acupuncturist on the name of the street.
Right.
And I guess two came up. She clicked on you, and then in your bio it says about the liver. And at that point in time, I was going through problems there, and she said, "Oh, no wonder why." He said, "So I go into you, I meet you, and you weren't even the person he was directing me to. He was directing me to the person across the street or down the block from you.
Oh, no.
Here's an acupuncturist."
Yeah.
But and that's when I say to you, I agree with you. You can't tell me there isn't a God, because he's like, yeah, I like the idea, but you're going to her.
It's
instead.
Amazing how this works.
Yeah,
I know.
we didn't figure that out. I don't think it was like until the second, third time that you and I were together. I'm like, by the way, I got you from Colin Buck. And you're like, who's that?
I know.
I'm like, no, he says he knows you. I don't know what you're talking about. And then we put the puzzle together.
But I'm terrible at names too. This happened to me like this week 3 times. People sent them and I can't remember who sent them. I probably treated them or something. I don't know. Isn't that awful?
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
So it's fine, just as long as you fix them. They don't care.
Yeah.
So when I heard about acupuncture, I mean, because I hate getting needles, even just getting blood taken. You know, I'm sitting there like, oh.
I was that guy too.
Well, you're the same way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So wait, it's the funniest thing in the world, because the first time I meet you, I walk into your studio or your clinic, and I'm sitting down. It's nice. It's got all the waterfalls as you would expect, and so in that sort of environment, that Eastern medicine environment, and the music's going, the meditation music, as I call it, and you come out. You've got pins in the side of your nostrils. And I said to myself, oh my God, what the hell did I get myself into? I mean, it was hysterical.
I don't even remember that.
You don't remember that? You came out and you had all these needles on your nose. And I'm like, oh my God, can I get the hell out of here?
It works. If you have a runny nose, it stops it.
And so I said to you, I'm like, hi. And you're
Crazy.
like, yeah. And you're like, I have my
Sinus
this is
thing.
my sinuses. I'm doing myself. And I said to myself, at this point, I don't know who you are.
I didn't even know that's what you were thinking.
Yeah, and I said,
oh my goodness.
I did. In fact, I probably said a few more things in my head, because at that point I'm just like, oh my God. Oh my God.
No.
And I said, and I remember, I don't know if you don't remember this, but I said to you, how did you get those needles in your nose? And you said, I did it myself. I went, oh God, who does that?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's bad enough to get somebody to poke me with a needle, let alone to think that somebody want to shoot themselves with a needle, and they're not doing it for drug purposes. So it was hysterical. So now I'm trying to talk to you and keep a straight face as you're looking at me with all these pinchy nose. Not very easy. Okay. I should get an A.
I'm going to remember that, not do that to anyone else. I didn't mean
get
to.
An A for acting, because I pretended that one. But then you sat me in. I had to fill out this whole thing online. It took forever. You did. Ask me every question. Did you have
all of that?
Did you have trauma as a kid? Did you have this? Yeah. And Mary's like, answer it right. Answer it right.
Oh,
like,
bless her. Yeah.
And so, long story short, when I came to you, your first initial meeting is a longer time. I mean, the two of us sat, I think, for 45 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to myself, aside from, can she please take those needles out of her nose? I got so used to it after a while.
I know.
And I said, this is the first person, notwithstanding Colin, but Colin was a friend. So I got to give a little bit of a pass to him, but without taking credit away from him. But you literally sat there for 45 minutes and listened to every excruciating detail I felt like I needed to give, because nobody had listened to it beforehand, and you listened. And as you were listening to those details, you were taking your notes and you're saying, I know what that is. I know what that is. And for the first time ever, I'm like, she understands it. She gets it. I was getting so excited that somebody finally understood. And the only way you can understand is because you were such a great listener.
Well, plus, you know, this science space that I'm working in, you're a detective. And I've always loved like Perot and Agatha Christie. I cut my teeth on all those old mysteries.
Really?
And I'm doing the same thing with people's health, like helping figure it out. Like it's totally amazing. But liver, there's not much you're going to tell me about liver
That you would already
that I
know.
wouldn't. I can spot it a mile away.
But we were going stomach, and we were talking about the stomach and the brain connection and everything else. And I was starting to, and I just felt as if you really cared and wanted to know.
Well, of course.
And then I started saying to you, hey, while I'm here, you know, my extremities are always cold. My feet are cold. My hands are cold. You know, downstairs gets cold. All this different stuff. And I just started to open up to you. And I'm like, I'm telling her everything. I'm not holding back anything back. And so then, then you start sticking needles in me. And I'm like,
You were so nervous.
And you're like, are you okay? Are you okay? Oh, this needle's going in now. And I'm like,
I know.
I still remember the day.
I know.
And I'm saying, oh my God.
And I was using baby needles.
You were using baby little
I know,
tiny needles.
little tiny ones. I know.
But then after a while, when I just started to go back into my breathing, I'm like, it's really not that bad. I was making things worse because I was tightening up so much. And then when I finally relaxed. And then I remember, you know, you left me in there. And I remember left, and you put, you know, there's a heating lamp on, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in here all by myself. But man, I can't remember the last time I felt that relaxed eventually. What is, I mean, because then you started talking all this different stuff, like, all right, so the connection between this, and then you would like hit my foot, and then you'd be my foot, and you'd be like, oh, your pancreas is not doing well. I'm like, it's my foot, not my pancreas, lady. Who is this one? And then you started teaching me about the connections, about how the connections went and stuff. So now that I've kind of given the gory detail, explain the premise, the high-level premise of what acupuncture is actually doing.
That's a really interesting question. And the science of it really bores me, to tell you the truth. Okay. I just know how to make things work functionally. But
in theory, what's happening?
In theory, what I'm seeing clinically over all this time is that we have energetic perturbances in our body. Like everything is supposed to work in this body of ours. It's supposed to communicate with each other. There's cascading enzymatic activities that are supposed to go from here to there, unfolding proteins and all that stuff. And everything is facilitated by the energy of the body. And if you have an impedance, an energy field impedance, then nothing works right. And
so what you're saying is if there is a blockage somehow, some way that's interrupting the flow, let's say, for instance, in the leg, that's going to impact the rest of the body altogether.
Right. It's really difficult to cross-translate it into English, and I'm really trying hard to do that because the Chinese stuff, you got to get ensconced in that and kind of get your mind into that world. And in their world, everything is relational. So nothing is black and white. It's like you feel good compared to what? You're hot compared to what? You have a fever compared to what? Your stomach's upset compared to what? Everything is relational. So when you talk about energetic perturbances, in Western science, the closest we could come is the interstitium. And remember, the interstitium was discovered like 7 years ago by Western science.
What is that?
It's the fluid passageways in the body.
Okay.
They never really made note of it because they only examined dead bodies, tissues. And when they did that, the interstitium was dried up. It wasn't full of fluid. So our channels in Chinese medicine work along those channel processes. It's like a surgeon that would have to cut around the interstitium to encapsulate something to remove it, like a cancer, they would get it. But a general MP would, or a medical doctor wouldn't, because they don't work with the interstitial layers like we do.
So when you're putting the needles in, and then you're hooking up the little wires, and you're putting on the little thing, and you feel the pulses.
Right.
What is that essentially doing?
So that's working off of Tesla and Noget's work way back in the 40s and 50s. They were scientists, and they discovered that every body type, everything in the body has a frequency. So from the patient perspective, unless I'm working with some Parkinson's or something that needs a special frequency, I run 2.5 to 4 hertz. 2.5 to 4 hertz goes to the hypothalamus. It releases beta endorphin and enkephalin, and it floods wherever I put the needles. So you get
So
that.
what are those, all those fancy words you just said, what do those things actually do for the body? Those
They make you
releases.
feel good.
Okay.
They relieve pain.
Okay.
And also, we think ACTH is involved because my patients,
What's ACTH?
ACTH is a way to modulate inflammation in the body. It's another secretion of the body that modulates inflammation. So I have a lot of high inflammatory people that come in and they want to know exactly, what am I doing? Is this thing really working? Because they can't buy into it if they don't. So I send them out for labs. They come back in, I treat them. We send them back out for labs, and lo and behold, their C-reactive protein goes down, their IL-F and A. Like, there's all these inflammatory markers that start decreasing.
Because of the connections that you've made and the frequencies have opened the flow of those juices that make you feel better.
But remember, I don't just do that.
Right.
I'm harping to, I'm like, tell me what you eat. Like, what's so pro-inflammatory? What else is going on in your environment? Are you exposed to heavy metals? Are you like doing toxic things? Did you just buy a new couch that might be off-gassing that you're absorbing and it's causing an inflammatory response? So I kind of do it from all the different angles.
One of the things I talked about with Colin was the dangers of the food that we are eating here in the United States,
Oh,
about
my
how it's so
goodness.
poisoned. Do you agree with him on that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. It just is frightening. So I'm taking Dr. Klinghardt classes with the ART, the Autonomic Response System Testing. He's a Western German MD, and he has a Woodinville, Washington presence here in the States. But the man is brilliant. He's the guy that helped Mark in Texas or whatever design the line test. Like, he's so well known in certain spaces. But they've actually discovered that glyphosate that's used readily in the United States replaces the glycine in our body. So when I get someone that comes in and they blood test for low glycine, guess what helps it? I give them fulvic humic acid to displace the existing glycine that's displaced, or to displace the glyphosate in their body, and flood them with glycine. And their glycine numbers come up and they stay up even when we take them off.
When I was in your care, there were many days when I would come in and I was really, really having stomach issues. And it's still ongoing sometimes in terms of the fact that I'll have a hard time. I get constipated, right? And a lot of people get constipated. And then I would come into you and I'd have those pains. And then you'd hook up all the needles. And by the time that you were done, the pain was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is that that you're setting these things up in such a way to where you're opening up those pathways that are blocked.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, this is why that pain is going. What happens when those, I'll call them the juices, the body juices that you're releasing, what happens when they fade back out again? I'm going to go back to pain.
Well, it depends on what the trigger was. So if you repeat the behavior that caused it, it's going to come back. But if you don't, if we can figure out what the trigger was and we can modify it or eliminate it, then it doesn't ever come back. Like, I've got people who only come see me once every 5-6 months. They're good. They just want to come in and make sure I still exist or say hi or whatever and get a treatment in the process, but they're good. They know how to maintain.
So I guess what you're saying in one way, I'm going to use Western medicine to make the example of what you're saying. I've been eating McDonald's and garbage my whole life. I go and I'm like, oh man, I can't, my heart doesn't feel well, I'm getting dizzy, whatever. Doctor tells him and says, you got a blockage. Mm-hmm. So he goes up and he gets rid of that blockage, and then he puts a stent in to open up the channel, and now the blood can flow again. And it's going to stay like that good if I can change my diet and start eating food that isn't going to cause that kind of blockage. So what you're saying is, if a guy goes out and gets that stint and he goes right back to eating all the garbage again, eventually it's going to happen again. Same thing with acupuncture, in the sense that you will reopen the channels and bring a person back to feeling well and being well. And they can stay like that for as long as they make some of the lifestyle changes that got them there in the first place. If they make those lifestyle changes, sort of like myself in a way, they don't have to come to you every week, once a week, twice a week, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the amazing part where I love about you, because from a financial standpoint, the drug companies want you to get on that omeprazole and on that statin, so they've got you for life. You're a customer.
I know.
You're in the business of, I want to make you well, and I'd really prefer never to have to see you again, because that means I fixed you, and I'll take the next person, please.
But I'd like to know how you're doing,
Of
you
course,
know,
of
because I get
course.
attached to my patients too. That's one of the, I would never make a good medical doctor, because I get too attached.
Well, I mean, the first thing you do when anybody ever walks into your place is you give them a hug hello, and then when they leave, you make them give you a hug goodbye. Do you do that with every person?
Mostly.
Mostly?
Yeah.
What's the theory behind that?
I was raised in the South. I was born in Mississippi, we just hug everybody and say, hey, you know. I'm used to being raised around a big old church of people, and I don't know. That's just how we greet each other.
So to the person who is absolutely frightened by the idea that they're going to have needles in them, what do you say to them? What do you say to make them feel comfortable? In my case, I was just so out of options. I was like, if you need to stick gasoline in my body to make me feel better, go ahead, hit the hose.
And that's most of the patients that come to me on. I mean, they are at their wit's end when they come in. But I show them the needle. I show them that each one is individually wrapped, it's sterile. I take it out and I flip it and I compare it to their hair and say, hey, it's smaller than your hair, and you can move all around in it. It's not going to break, and I only put it so deep. And I just go through and I put it in me, and I'm like, do you want me to try on you while you're standing up? And I try it on them sometimes if they're really freaking out. And they're like, it's not so bad. I said, that's right. It's not so bad. And then when they get on the table, I found another technique that was taught to me by a neurologist. I take neurology classes from Dr. Amen at Carrick Institute, and he showed me how to desensitize the area. So now I've got another trick to help desensitize those guys that are real jumpy. And I just I'm learning constantly. That was like 6 months ago I learned that.
Oh, I got to come back.
Well, we'll see if it works on you. You're pretty jumpy.
I'm pretty jumpy.
I know.
So
I had to use my ear hard on you.
What you say to that? So the person you saying I guess what you're saying is, it's not as scary as it sounds or you think.
Right, and there are some people that I can't ever put a needle in, so I have to use my laser and I have to use my ear heart. But by far, they're not as effective, really.
Now, I know what the laser and the air heart is because you've used it on me, but explain to the people who are listening to you, what is that? How does the laser coordinate or I should say replace the needles and sort of do the same thing?
So this is back to the part that I love. So lasers, I have a conduction, LLLT, they call it low-level laser therapy. You pay a fortune for the thing. But it has a conduction system that I can put a specific frequency in a body area and match what it should be. And what that does is when your body, let's say if your ovaries for a female are running at 500 and they should be 1200, so they're like causing problems like menstrual pains for a lady, I can bring it up to 1200 and the brain registers. It says, hey, it should be 1200. Let me see if I can do something to tune that up. And as long as it's not a pathological, physiological, like a structural trauma that we're trying to break through, it's pretty successful, but you got to be patient. It takes many times to correct it. So that's the conduction laser. And some people can only do that. That's all they want. Like neuropathy is fabulous for that. There's things, I'm still learning about all the things that it can do, but I've mostly treated female issues, brain disorders, neuropathies of all different kinds, and pain with it so far. No stomach internal diseases yet.
So I'm going to give a story, and then I'd like you to maybe pick out one or two stories that you have that are really worth telling, that sells the person who's skeptical about acupuncture that,
Okay.
believe me when I tell you it works. So I have a story that's very close to home. So Mary started having the woman problems. And she hadn't entered menopause, right? But the periods were coming at different times or what have you. And then I remember one day, it was the scariest thing because Mary, unlike me, I'm a baby, right?
Oh,
So
I know.
I can't go anything. I don't have the threshold of Ryan smiling. I have no threshold for pain or whatever it may be. I don't want to be in any kind of pain. If I have a congestion, if I have a cold, I am a baby. Mary, on the other hand, can live through all pain like she's given a baby, like birth to a baby.
I know.
Yeah.
She's a champ.
She's a champ. So to that extent, one day she comes home and I can tell something's really wrong. And she's like, you need to come upstairs. So I go upstairs. She gets completely naked, goes into the shower, and I've never seen anything like it before in my life. She's literally just bleeding from, the woman area down there. And I mean, there have been a couple of times, if I'm just going to make a little humor in this, because every guy has lived through this, there have been a couple of times in my house when Mary has been having her menstrual cycle where I go to the bathroom and she didn't flush well enough and I got to look at what's in there. And I'm like,
know.
oh, can you flush the toilet? I don't want to look at that.
I know.
And meanwhile, all it is a little tiny spot in there.
Exactly.
Now I'm watching the flow and it won't stop. And I said, have you ever bled like this? And she said, I've never bled like this before. So we get her, we take her together, and I take her to her gynecologist. And won't say the woman's name. And Mary had already had a surgery. She already had the surgery.
Right.
They didn't want to take out her uterus, but they did a cleaning, like a cleansing, to see if they could get whatever.
Yeah.
So we go in there. She comes out and she says, they want to put me on a cancer drug. I said, what? Wants to put me on a cancer drug. And I said,
yeah, I remember that.
Meanwhile, we're going to New York on a trip for 2 weeks in a matter of 2 or 3 days. And I said to her, listen to me. I'm taking you to Kim. We have done this your way. We've done it this way. You're not going on a cancer drug. We're going to do it my way. And my way is I'm taking you to Kim. And she's finally like, fine, because she wasn't into the acupuncture thing. She didn't believe in it, right? Whatever. So I take her to you, and you do your thing. And she comes home, and all of a sudden, the bleeding has completely stopped. It stopped. The pain was gone. The bleeding stopped. And you actually said, if I'm not mistaken, come back 3 days in a row. So we went back 3 days in a row, including the third day when we were leaving. So, I mean, we were all packed up in your parking lot. We're sitting out there waiting to go. And you're zapping Mary. Mary never bled again. She didn't have to go have the hysterectomy. She didn't have to go on the cancer drugs. And to this day, knock on wood, she's so much better. And it's funny because, look, I'll be the first one to say, you're not cheap. But you get what you pay for, right? And so I'm not even going to tell you because we just did, when we do our taxes, we were on extension or whatever. And I'm like, you know how much we spent on Kim last year? And she said, how much? I said, this much.
I have a few
and
people
between
that
me
say that.
and Mary and Ashley, and we just, and Mary said, I would spend double.
Oh,
and I said,
how sweet.
And I said, I know. That doesn't mean that you're allowed to charge us more.
I'm not charging you more. No.
So anyway, long story short, I have seen it work. I mean, obviously in my end, it worked as well, but Mary's was another level of problem. And I mean, it solved the problem. So what happened in your estimation? What did you do to stop that bleeding and end that pain and be able to put her on a path to where she now feels like a normal person again?
Well, so we both gave her a herb. Remember, we gave her an herb that stops internal bleeding. Remember the instructions with the little box?
I'm going to pretend like I don't remember anything.
Okay. Well, I put her on a herb that stops internal bleeding.
What's the herb called? Or is that magic?
I'd have to look back. I think we put her on Yunnan Bao, and it's a specific dosage that you take. So you have to stop the bleeding, and then you have to take it for a little bit after, and then you come off. And she never had to go back on it because we were able to successfully stop her bleeding to where she got into her cycle again. But also, I lifted her, the Chinese people call it the spleen system. It holds the blood in. So I took spleen 1 and I needled it. She let me put needles in her toes, and she retained them. So I was able to do that. Then I used the laser to regulate the frequency.
Wait, let's go time out for a second, because this goes back to what I said earlier. So we're talking about, her lady parts, which are mid-body, and you're putting needles in the toes.
I have people that come to see me from all over the world for this treatment. I've got like one lady that's a pilot, and every time she's in the States, she flies in here to come see me. So
why the toes?
Because it's the spleen 1. It's
what
famous.
What does spleen 1 mean?
Spleen it's not just the spleen organ, it's the system in Chinese medicine that performs many functions. Digestion is part of that system, but a bigger part of it is containing the blood and prolapse. So that helped her get through that prolapse issue,
yes.
Stop the bleeding. I worked heavily on the spleen system to pull it up, to tease it up. And there's no scientific explanation. I mean, it sounds like gibberish when you
yes.
talk about it, but I've seen it 100 times. It works every time. You just have to have faith that it's going to work and pray, and it works every time.
So that whole body connection that is flowing from toe to brain, it's all one super highway that is all connected. Everything is coming in and out on time, all connected.
Right.
And therefore, what you're saying is using that connection that connects to the spleen, that goes down to there, by putting the needles into the toes, that helps it. What is the needle doing?
It's stimulating. It's providing a signal to the brain. Get some energy down here, and it has to traverse that channel to get it down, and then it has to pop back up. It's got to send a signal back to the brain and say, okay, there's a needle down there, and guess what? I picked up along the way. This lady's bleeding. This lady's got prolapse. This lady's got whatever. So I look at the trajectories of the channels, and I try to get the furthest most point. It's really complicated what we do, and that's why it takes you 3 years just to get your mind around it,
Yeah.
And then you need to practice 3 or 4 years before you really get good and help people on a consistent basis.
What about with headaches? I mean, one of the things that I've also seen that Mary has less of, and Ryan will attest to this, Mary has forever had chronic migraine headaches all throughout her time. I mean, I've been with her since I'm 14. All throughout her life, she's had chronic headaches. She goes to you, and those headaches are more or less gone. Does she ever get a headache where she's like, hey, I need some Advil? Of course.
Right.
But she never, ever has those migraines where she's got to lay down in the bed, turn off the lights, and all that stuff. That stuff is gone. So how does that work? How do you solve, when somebody comes to you and says, I have lots of migraines, I mean, where do you do that? Because if you're saying the toe is sending the signal to the brain, how do you have the brain send the signal to the brain?
Well, you don't have to. So like if I were treating, I always have to know what kind of headache. If it's frontal, I would treat underneath the knees. If it was occipital, I would probably treat by the little toe. So it just depends on the body area. I try to find a channel or an extraordinary channel and hit it at its furthermost tip where I can get the most bang for the buck to get a signal to the brain. And the signal to the brain is going to go through something, gunk, and it's going to tell the brain she's gunked up. Like maybe her glial function is not working, that flushing mechanism you're supposed to get every 45 minutes. Maybe there's some heavy toxic buildup in the brain that just needed to come out. It will come out because the brain is going to send back a signal and say, okay, I'm taking care of it. Now I know. Because it got the information on the way up.
Why isn't it getting the information without the needle and the conduit? Is because there's a block? Is that what it is? I mean,
Some people say that, but honestly, Dennis, I think the more I work with people, I think the body has millions of things it's doing. And if it's not on fire, it puts it on the side. And so if Mary was dealing with that headache by laying down in a dark room and getting out of the way, maybe the body was saying that she needs a rest anyway. So let's just let her be. We're not going to fix this headache for her. You had to make the brain fix it.
You had to force it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I just brought it, and the brain it'll finally say, okay, enough. I'm going to fix it now.
By putting the needles in it, what you're doing is you're saying to the brain, hey man, I need you to pay attention to what it is I'm poking at right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the theory behind it.
Right. And some people need more, some people need less. It depends on the energetic. Like if I have a lot of people with tattoos, they take a lot longer. If there's scars, they take a lot longer, because those are their traumas that were done to the body that impede the electronic transfer of its data in the body.
What about there's a lot of parents and grandparents watching this. I mean, nowadays, and I don't know, you talk to certain people, they'll tell you it's because of the vaccines. You talk to other people, it's because of the food or whatever. But we have a lot of kids these days that seem to just be all amped up. They'll call it, ADHD and all this other different stuff. What about kids who have attention deficits and things of that nature? Can acupuncture actually work for them as well, or even adults?
Well,
because I may send Marion to you.
So I treat a lot of attention deficit type things. My grandbaby came to me with ADHD. They wanted me to put her on meds. And they said between last year and this year, she's 150% better.
How old is she?
She's 8 now. She was 8 December 27th.
So was her thing that we can't get her to sit down at school, we can't get her to focus in on this, misbehavior.
Yeah.
And so she came to you, and now I think they've been with you for a year and a half. You said, right? Yeah. I remember a year and a half ago when they were coming. And so you started treating her.
I've never put a needle in her.
So what kind of stuff?
So when I took her for her booster, for her vaccine, for school, I noticed that she got a huge red mark. So the adjuvants were irritating her system. And I found out what shot they gave her, what the adjuvants were, and I found out how to detoxify her. That's what led me to Klinghardt, to study under him. He knows how to detox all this stuff. I also know they had a history of COVID. I also knew they had both Pfizer vaccines plus a booster. So I've decluttered their body of all of that stuff. I can take it right out of somebody. We have ionic foot baths that we use. I give them tinctures. I give them binders. I send everything through the colon so it's not hurting their kidneys. We do exercises to retain. Their attention span is so good now.
So that's amazing. You just brought up something that I know people will definitely want to hear. And not everybody can travel to Florida to see you. So I'd love it if you would give them a little advice of maybe where they have to go and what they have to ask for. The concern that people have who have been vaccinated, all the studies keep on coming up and saying there's another problem with this, and it looks like the vaccine is causing that, and what have you. So people who are vaccinated often are very scared, and they say, how do I get this out of me? In fact, one guy that I've had on my political podcast many times is Dr. Peter McCullough. He is the most published cardiologist in the world, and his whole thing now, he has completely gone to how to make people better post-COVID who had the shot. He is very anti-COVID vaccine shot. What should they ask for, these people, if they go to an acupuncturist when they say, I want to get this vaccine out of me?
Dennis, I don't know of many acupuncturists that did what I did.
Really?
I'm at the doctoral level and advanced level, which allowed me to take MD classes with Dr. Klinghardt.
Okay.
And so I started from the ground up. They may have to go to an MD. They may have to go to a functional doctor.
If they said, you know what, the hell with it. I'll spend the $1,000 to get a flight and I'll try to get myself in with Kim. What is it that you would be doing for them exactly?
Well, hopefully we've worked together before they came in here, so we kind of know their history of what's going on and shuffle through a lot of the busy work that we have to do at first. But then I would do an autonomic response system test on them. You can guarantee if they've had the vaccine, you're going to have to clear it. If they've had COVID, you have to clear it. Anyone that's breathing air these days in the United States is getting aluminum. You got to clear it. Anyone that's had amalgams in their mouth, you got to clear it. Mercury has a 31-year half-life. That means when you get your last amalgam out of your mouth, 31 years from then, you got 50% of it still there, and it's a neurotoxin. People are like devastated, and they don't know why.
People who have fillings.
I do a lot of dental, like I ask them to get records. I want to know everything. If you want me to do a deep dive, you're paying me good money, and I'm interested. I want to figure out everything that went wrong with you and when it happened and how to get rid of it.
So if you're getting rid of it, are you getting rid of it through needles? Are you getting rid of it through the laser?
I don't ever put needles. I only put needles in about 50% of my patients.
All right, you're getting rid of it through the lasers? I mean, is there something that somebody's doing when they're laying down in your bench, on your bench, that you're actually doing where it's like, okay, it's gone now?
What I would recommend is someone get on a binder, first of all, an intelligent binder.
What's a binder?
So their binders would be zeolite, it would be charcoal, it would be chlorella, it would be spirulina, celery juice is a binder. So I would get on a binder before anybody comes in my door. I would like I tell them, like, I'm so busy now. I'm like, just get on your binder, do it 4 weeks, then come in, because I wouldn't put anything in them to try to get rid of something unless we're already getting rid of the gunk that we can. So the binder that I recommend, if people can take it digestively, is chlorella vulgaris or parendosa. It's a cracked membrane, so it's easy on the digestion. And then you have to make sure that you take enough, not just to mobilize it, but also to excrete it through your colon. Your kidneys only have like 2 ping pong table square, that's the surface area that it would cover, and they're for life. If we send it through your colon, it covers 2 tennis ball courts, and they replace each other every 21 days. So even if you mess up your colon, you have a chance of recovering it. So try to bind junk out of your body through your colon. Don't give yourself diarrhea. Don't make yourself constipated, but get it out through there. Then after that, we'd have to look at, like, what is your risk? What is your risk? We know glyphosate is going to be in you if you live in the United States. We know you're going to have aluminum toxicity. Now, also think about that anyone born before, 1984 has lead in their bones. Isn't that when we unleaded gas? Wasn't it the 80s or 70s?
Yeah, I think it was the 70s.
Well, guess what happens? You get older and your bones shrink, and what goes out in your body? The lead gets released. Who's taking care of that for you? So you've got to think through all of the risk, where you were born, what you were exposed to. It's pretty complicated what you have to go through.
And that's why you go through that entire, excruciating 4, 5, 6 page thing where you want to know every single last thing. Because you're right. The doctor who comes in and sees you for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe one question he asks you is, do you have heart disease running in your family? And yeah, I do. All right, here's a statin. Even if you say to him, no, I don't. Well, here's a statin.
I just had a case of statins. My patient has been pressured by her, and she's concierge cardiologist. She pays big bucks for this lady. Tried to push her on the statin. She said, no, 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 no. This last time, I said, just next time you go in for your checkup, ask them for a calcium scan of your heart. See what comes out. She gave it to her. 0 calcium buildup. 0.
That's
Inflammatory markers are low. Her cholesterol is slightly high. She might need that for her brain.
Right.
Your cholesterol is a food for your brain.
Right.
And her doctor had to say, no, you don't need the statin for the first time in 12 years.
Because she had a 0 calcium.
Yeah. But why didn't she give her the calcium scan before?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Because they're so trained, the pill mill, like you said.
I think they're
take
so
this
busy.
Pill, take this pill.
They're so busy.
You know what? If you could, taking maybe one of the more general problems that everybody faces, because you have so many great stories. You used to tell them, I used to be give me the story.
I can't even remember them.
If you had a story that you wanted to tell people, because some people think that holistic medicine and acupuncture, just like chiropractic, is a bunch of BS. All right. It's placebo. Now, all right. You want to say placebo? I had stomach pain before I went into you. You stuck the needles in. I made my mind, I'm going to be better and my stomach is better. I'll have that argument with you. But I watched my wife. My wife was not bleeding because her brain was tricking her, okay?
Right.
My wife was bleeding, and you stopped the bleeding. So with that in mind, if you had a story that is, one of your patients that you would tell to somebody about a major chronic issue that a lot of people, maybe digestive or something like that, where you dealt with them and the stuff is gone. I mean, I know you even had cancer patients that came into you with cancer, and by the time they were done, they didn't have cancer anymore.
Well, we don't treat cancer, and I still don't. Big liability in that space.
Right.
But I do treat phlegm buildup. So if you have a nodule and I can palpate it, then I can figure out how to kind of help you dissolve that. So maybe it doesn't become a cancer.
Okay.
So I view things totally through different lenses.
Okay.
But if I were to give someone like super words of encouragement, I'd say have patience and be your own detective and start writing your diary. Start with the day you were born. Were there problems when your mother was pregnant with you? Did you have a C-section or were you normal delivery? Did you thrive as a child? Did you have inoculations? Where were you born? I mean, I know so much more working with a broader scope. And now some people fly in to see me from different areas. So I'm getting to know like Iowa. I didn't know Iowa before. I didn't know Kansas before. Like I'm getting to know like nuances of their environments there too, which is super exciting.
Hey everybody, Denny here. We're going to take a quick break from Kim to talk to you about my personal favorite product. The 6.7 ounce bottle of Miracle Me Relief Body Oil. This is an essential blend of CBD and aloe, and I gotta say, I use it every day. Now, if you're a follower of DML, you know he uses it every day too. He's on the older side, he gets his aches and pains, he likes to lather it on. Me, I'm more of a situational person. Me and Ryan are constantly in the warehouse all day working, sometimes on our laptops, sometimes packaging. When I get a little sore or I feel like I have a little bit of tech neck going, I usually just, not even kidding, squirt some, lather it up, put it on my neck. Times when me and Ryan are actually working out and my workout was very extensive, maybe it was bicep day, sometimes I put it on my arms. The truth is, it's honestly a great product that I feel personally, it's essential to any part of my body that's hurting or feels sore or just needs that little extra TLC. The good news is we're actually having a 25% discount on the 6.7 ounce Miracle Me bottle with the launch of this Life After 50 episode. The promo code for the 25% off is HEAL, HEAL, HEAL. Use that code, have 25% off taken off your order. How to get to the product? DMLCBD.com/miracle. That, again, DMLCBD.com/miracle. It'll take you to our landing page. You can place an order and put in promo code HEAL. Now back to Kim.
So do you have one story, the one pocket story you'd love to tell?
There's a lot. I guess the most curious one that came in, so Mayo Clinic has 2 mysterious disease sections, and they referred one of their patients to me because she lived in Vero. And she had this burning going down her arm, and she was super excitable, really depressed, couldn't sleep at night. She was on edge. She couldn't eat. She was losing weight. Everything in the book was wrong with her. So they couldn't figure her out at Mayo. And you know, if Mayo can't figure it out, that's a pretty big deal.
Yes.
And anyway, I've got a story to tell you after that. But she came in and I asked her to list all of her medications. And I thought, oh my gosh, like who gave you this and who gave you that? Come to find out it was like 7 or 8 different doctors had been giving her things that she had been on for a long time. One of them was a statin, no CoQ10 on it. So I added CoQ10, and all I asked her to do was to divide up her prescriptions. Because I can't imagine taking a bowl full of prescriptions at one time. You should take a couple here, a couple there, some food or snack in between. We did that. Immediately the burning pain in her arms went away. Now, see, I think the only reason I was able to do that for her is because I took the time to be able to look at it, where Mayo was competent, but they were like looking at it from lab tests and scans and whatever they could observe in clinic, but nobody had time to go through the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And since then, we've got her digestion back to normal. She's eating food. She's gained 10, 12 pounds maybe by now. She's sleeping through the night. She's not a nervous wreck. She can drive herself. Her husband doesn't have to drive her everywhere. She's not having aches and pains. And I mean, my heart just goes out to her. She's like 92, you know,
Oh, wow.
92, and she was suffering. And now she feels like she can live to be over 100.
What's the second story you wanted to tell?
Well, the only thing I was going to say is that I have compassion for the Western doctors. I don't want them to go away. If I break my leg, I want to go to ER and have them fix it. They know what's going on too. I see a lot of doctors now. They're just as frustrated as all of us. It's whatever the system is that we've evolved to. So I would just encourage everybody to have patience with everyone and try to have a heart.
What about when it comes down to sleep? I mean, that's another big, huge thing that people have suffering from. I mean, do you help people who are lacking the ability to have a good night's sleep?
Yeah, I go through and, the Wi-Fi, I know it's convenient, but we don't know everything that's going on. So the first thing I'm like, turn off your Wi-Fi at night, get rid of your phone, no screens 3 hours before you go to bed, read a book. Better yet, take a walk if you can, have a cool bedroom, try to get into some sort of a breathing program. And I kind of I coach people back into, we've got to get them sleeping because their glial function won't work. And that's like a flushing of the brain. You're flushing all your toxins out. If
Through
you're not,
sleep.
Yeah, through sleep. You have to be deep REM sleep, 45 minutes. Every 45 minutes, you get a flush. So the more 45-minute increments you can get of contiguous deep sleep, the better off you are. So we might only get 2, but then suddenly we get 4, and then we get 7. And if I have to give them something, I have peace pearls or some sort of herbal, have them do an Epsom salt foot bath or a foot bath that I've got that's herbal. There's all kinds of different things you can do.
How dangerous do you think it is, those sleep over-the-counter sleep remedies that, take those?
Well, I know
they scare the hell out of me.
Mayo tried to give me Ambien, and that's on the no-go list for me. I started ripping my tubes out, and I woke up and my hands were like strapped to the bed.
Really?
She said I went nuts on the stuff. And Mel, the anesthesiologist that I work with, he said he's had so many patients that butt naked would go up to the ATM and take out money. And have a fistful of money when they woke up. Lord help them. They didn't know how they got to the ATM or back, but it was on the camera for the bank. Is that not crazy?
It's nuts. I mean, the other thing too, just simple stuff like Tylenol PM. I've read so many bad things about how it like almost turns your brain off to a certain level. It's like, you're suffocating your brain.
Yeah, I wouldn't do anything. Try lavender, lavender, use some essential oil.
Yeah.
So you can rub the bottom of your foot with lavender inside the big toe and right on that soft part below the ball. Very soothing. And have someone else do it. It could be kind of intimate for someone to do that to each other.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So just ending on this with you. I do that with everybody here. I mean, you said you're 63, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm listening to you right now. You're still going to learn. You're still going to get more, degrees in this and studying with this one and studying that one. You got people now coming to you from all over the world, whether it's here in the United States, Kansas. I mean, you just said it. You seem to be going in a different direction than the average 63-year-old. The average 63-year-old is saying, "Oh, I got 2 more years and I'm all done."
Yeah, that's
You're
not
going
me.
along the lines of, "You kidding me? I get it. I'll sleep when I'm dead." One of those things.
Exactly.
Do you think some of that has to do with the fact because you came so close to death that you're like, "I'm not going to waste a single moment of my life"?
Oh, yeah, I might have had a different perspective. I mean, because I was slated to have a golden retirement with the state of Alaska, but I kind of started catching on when a lot of people were getting sick and hitting the health plan there, cost-wise. They were getting terribly sick if they didn't have anything to do. So I was kind of being educated back way in the day, maybe 30 years ago. But I feel young. I feel like I can still contribute it and to help people. If I don't, who else will? Like, who else is going to serve that niche or whatever?
So is that your advice to people who are in the 60s? I mean, who are sitting there being like, "Oh, it's time to wind down"? I mean, you just seem like you're just winding up.
You got to have a purpose. What is their purpose? Maybe they have a hobby that would fill that niche. I don't know. But if you don't have something, you're going to get real sick soon.
There was a movie, I watched it not so long ago, about longevity. And this guy did a study over a long period of time. And the people who live the longest are the ones who have the least amount of stress, who eat basic food that isn't in boxes and bags.
Right.
And they said one of the biggest drivers was they're always moving. They're always using their hands, walking their, and they're showing 80-year-old, 90-year-old women going, men, and moving wood and doing all sorts of stuff. And they just said they're constantly moving, that they're not still.
Right.
And that's the one thing about retirement. I mean, the block I live on, I'm pretty much the youngest guy on my street. And it's amazing how some of the people are out there walking every single day. I just walked with a woman the other day. She's in her early 80s. We walked for 5.5 miles. And the only reason why we stopped, or I should say she stopped, is because the route took us back to our house. She's my neighbor.
Oh.
And I said, this woman's going to live forever because she's outpacing me.
Right.
Whereas when you get the other people who just seem like they're sitting around because they don't have purpose or whatever it may be, you could just see they're the ones who just look
Exactly.
sick,
Exactly. You can always have a purpose. Go volunteer, soup kitchen. So, I mean, there's libraries that need help. They're all over the place. Just walk in and say, do you need some help?
Yeah.
It was so funny at the state of Alaska, retirees would go to work for Home Depot. So you'd see like a chief of staff sitting at the lumber section for contractors. And you're going, what are you doing? You knew he had $1 gazillion in the bank and he had like a retirement out of this world. He goes, I'm learning how to do my house and I'm meeting all these contractors and I love just sitting here. So anyway.
Last question for you. What do you say to people? I mean, I touched this before, but then we jumped off it. Last thing is, there are a lot of people who think that, like I said, that acupuncture is voodoo, that it's a placebo. What do you say to them?
You can't change everybody. I'd say just believe it. There's not enough of us to treat them anyway. I mean, there really aren't. We're not pumping out enough. If everybody wanted an acupuncture treatment right now and they tried to find it, all of us would be booked too much.
You wouldn't be able to serve.
Yeah, I am as busy as I want to be.
So for the people who don't believe, you really say, I don't give a rat's ass.
Not really. I don't. They don't affect me. So I'm like, okay, that's on you. Maybe there's a different thing that'll work for them.
So somebody who is watching this, because we get watched. I mean, we got people around the world who watch. I mean, what is the website if they want to go learn more about you?
Oh, VIM, V-I-M, acupuncture.com.
V-I-M. Acupuncture.com.
And Vim is my grandmother's favorite word. That's to honor her. She's deceased now, but her favorite saying was, you've got to have some vim and vigor. It meant energy. So that I chose that to honor her.
That's why Vim is Vim. Okay. Because like I said, it shows up on my bank statement every single month.
I mean,
know. There's like,
you're not going to let me live that down,
there's
right?
10 checks written, 8 of them are to Vim. So listen, it's money worth spending.
And thank you for the check, by the way. I don't like credit cards. I saved the 3%, right? Okay. Just saying.
What are you doing with all that money? That's another podcast.
I just bought a $40,000 piece of equipment. I literally, I don't need a lot of salary because I'm on a retirement with the state of Alaska. Yeah. So most of it gets poured back into the business.
Put it right back into the business.
Some of it goes to my grandbabies, but most of it back in.
I know. I wasn't serious on my question, but I mean, you didn't have to tell me that. But I do know. I mean, I could attest to the lasers and the stuff that you have in there. I mean, it costs a lot of money. And
plus I had to get training. You can't use it till you get signed off on it.
Right.
So that meant I probably had to pour months into it. So
that's great. Well, you're definitely changing the world one person at a time.
Trying to.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you.
That's it from us. Thank you guys for listening to our latest episode of Life After 50. If you go to DennisMichaelLynch.com, you can sign up for the DML newsletters to stay up to date on everything we got going on and everything we have coming up in the next few weeks. Next week, there will be another episode of Life After 50. So stay tuned, and we'll see you then. And we all hope you have a blessed and safe weekend.